an enzyme that converts air into electricity, energy from thin air.
What's the word? What's the word? What's the word?
Hello and welcome to another fabulous news roundup from Everything Electric. Now I'm going to cover a number of stories, but something a bit special happened recently, which really cheered up the amazing, hard-working team behind the scenes at the Fully Charged Show. Fully Charged Show passed 1 million subscribers on the channel, which is a lovely milestone. Now it's taken 13 years to reach that number. Now, there are numerous other YouTube channels with way more subs who've only been going a handful of years. So we are far from being a truly huge channel, but still, we're all really pumped and stoked about it. No, seriously, it is an amazing moment for us. It's really good. It makes no difference to anyone else. It just really helps us. So here's a little montage to celebrate the moment. And welcome to Fully Charged. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
What we have here is a glimpse into the future. Shall we?
That is truly exciting.
It's this interactive and engaging. How amazing is this?
If only there was an easier way of doing this.
I'm not sure you can put a price on that, Bob.
I've already forgotten that we're actually flying along in an electric aircraft.
Completely nuts.
Electric world.
Seeing bigger and bigger.
How are we going to power this baby?
We'll get into all that sensible stuff in a minute.
They're driving like that.
Get it?
Why is Elliot so dashing? Because we're all target.
What's the word?
Sensible journalism.
You can do stuff without destroying the planet. That's the basic gist of the message. So thanks for subscribing, and please tell your friends and family about the work we're doing, and maybe come along to one of our live shows. Oh, I don't think I mentioned it. No, I'm not going to mention it. Okay, enough about that. Here's some tasty, data-rich news stories, and I have to say, opinion pieces. Now, one thing that's a constant in the world of renewables, electric ground transport, and the slow and painful transition away from burning fossil fuels is the quite legitimate fears people have that we might be jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire. And the frying pan is obviously made of something, and so is the fire. Now, we might be reducing our reliance on fossil fuel while increasing our reliance on rare earth metals that only exist in China, or cobalt that is only dug up by children in the Congo. There's no other way of getting a cobalt. It has to be dug up by children, I've been told on Twitter. Or lithium that comes from the Atacama Desert in Chile. We absolutely do need to know where these materials come from and who is suffering as a result of extracting them. And we do need to apply pressure to the mining companies to act responsibly. And we do have to recycle these materials, but we also need to keep these activities in context. Now, here's a very useful graphic from visualcapitalist.com, which puts in perspective what we extract from the Earth's crust every year. This visualization shows us what we dug up in 2019. And as you can immediately see, iron ore makes up roughly 94% of everything we dig up. Nothing to do with electric vehicles. Everything we make is made of iron ore. Everything. Your phone has it in. Your car has it in. Your house has it in. Your kitchen has it in. The shops you go to have it in. The roads you drive on have it in. That is 3.2 billion tons of iron ore extraction, and it dwarfs all other extraction, as is painfully obvious the other materials we need, things like bauxite for aluminium, manganese for steel making and batteries, chromium for stainless steel manufacturing. Then you've got your lead, your nickel, your zinc, your titanium, your zircon, magnesium, strontium, your tin, your molybdenum. It's a difficult one to say. Your molybdenum. And finally, right down at the bottom of the list, the smallest amounts of materials extracted each year, you've got your rare earths, your lithium, and your cobalt. And yet those are the ones people endlessly refer to because they've been informed by the fossil fuel lobby, who repeat ad nauseum that these metals and minerals are terrible and we're destroying the earth by extracting them. Although we were extracting them way, way before electric cars came on the scene, and we were extracting huge amounts of iron ore before electric cars were even thought of. Meanwhile, another 1 billion tons of iron ore is dug up, which is vital. Iron ore is used for making steel, and we use steel in many different ways. Cars, obviously, but buildings, bridges, oil refineries, liquid fuel storage tanks, pipelines to move crude oil, pipelines that span the wilderness transporting crude oil. And of course, yes, occasionally it leaks. Sorry, off topic, but I'm just saying. And of course, steel is used for wind turbine towers and electric vehicles and pots and pans. Steel is everywhere, but never, not once have I ever read a comment or seen a tweet that criticises the biggest single source of global disruption due to mining. Iron ore extraction, and the biggest mines in the world. They are huge, and there's hundreds of them. These massive mines are for the sole purpose of extracting iron ore. And where is the world's largest iron ore mine? Is it in Bolivia, or is it in the Congo, or is it in Malaysia? No, it's the Kiruna iron ore mine in Sweden. One single mine produces 26 million tons of iron ore every year and is one of the most efficiently run and lowest carbon mines in the world. Of course it is. It's in Sweden. Oh, and one last, even more important topic. Here's a simple graphic from Carbon Brief, which gives a fairly good illustration of the impact of extracting fossil fuel in comparison to all that mining I've been talking about. This is from 2021. 15.13 billion tons of oil was extracted and burnt once. We can't burn it again. We can't recycle it at the end of life. Imagine the impact that extraction has on the planet we inhabit. 15.13 billion tons in 1 year. In 2021, when actually demand for oil was reduced. It's normally more than that. I'll put links to the graphics in the shows as it's very handy to have when your bitter anti-vax flat earth cousin or your weird uncle who stands too close to you at parties starts spouting on about lithium. And this one is a bit bonkers, and we may never hear anything more about it, but it caught my eye and I thought it was worth mentioning. This story is from Australia, but it's not an Australian story. Hang on, I've done Australia enough this year. It seems some Aussie scientists have discovered an enzyme, wait for it, an enzyme that converts air into electricity.
What the what?
Yeah. A team from Monash University in Melbourne, Australia, found that a hydrogen-consuming enzyme from a common soil bacterium was able to generate an electrical current using the atmosphere as an energy source. Professor Chris Greening from Monash University's Biomedicine Discovery Institute said in an interview, "We've known for some time," he said, "that bacteria can use the trace hydrogen in the air as a source of energy to help them grow and survive, including places in Antarctic soils, volcanic craters, and deep in the ocean. But we didn't know how they did this until now." The discovery was detailed in a paper titled Structural Basis for Bacterial Energy Extraction from Atmospheric Hydrogen, published in the journal Nature on Wednesday last week, so very recent. The enzyme, called HUC, proved to be astonishingly stable and remarkably efficient at creating energy from thin air, according to the researchers. So their plan is to gather together as much HUC as they can get their mitts on and create a device that can extract that naturally occurring power and produce usable electricity. Now, I want to be the first to point out that this sounds utterly bonkers, but hear me out. When was the last time you heard a fascinating story about a breakthrough in fossil fuel technology, or a new system for storing vast amounts of liquid fuel in compressed form, or cheaper ways to burn oil to move a ship? I'll answer for you. You haven't, because we've long passed the point where there was any genuine development in the way we extract and burn liquid fuels. But there are daily incredible discoveries in a very wide and ever-changing field of renewable or sustainable energy and clean technology. Barking mad ideas like this that 9 times out of 10 turn out to be absolutely nothing, to be a flop. But we only need 1 or maybe 2 more to literally change the way we live on the planet. I sense that there is going to be a lot of battery news this year, and here's one that's very recent. A company called April Technologies from Fremont in California has recently released details of a new battery cell with almost double the energy density of anything currently in use. So the first generation 4680 cells that Tesla are churning out by the gigawatt at the moment contain around 276 watt hours of electricity per kilogram of weight. Truly amazing piece of technology. Really solid, really reliable, being produced in the billions, literally the billions, these cells. And they're amazing. And they make all these cars work really, really well. Now, to put that energy density into some kind of historical context, the very first Tesla, the Tesla Roadster, the car that appears in the very first episode of the Fully Charged show 13 years ago, when we had 1 subscriber, the batteries in that car had an energy density of 117 watt hours per kilogram. So in the intervening 12 years, the energy density of the batteries in cars has more than doubled. So has their lifespan, and their cost has reduced by around 90%. But everyone in Batteryville knows that we are still in the foothills when it comes to energy density in batteries. April Technologies' new battery can hold 500 watt hours per kilogram. So who cares? So what? It's all gobbledygook to me. I can understand a gallon of liquid fuel that you burn in a combustion engine and it takes you so many miles. That's easy. All this watt hour per kilogram gubbins gives me a headache. So what this means is, let's take a car like the MG4, which I love, by the way. We have one on lease. It's parked right behind me here in the garage. The MG4 has a 65 kilowatt hour battery pack. Now, try as I might to find the weight of the actual battery pack as opposed to the car, no one seems to have listed it. I can't find. If anyone can find how much the MG4 65 kilowatt hour battery pack weighs, please drop me a comment. I failed to do it. However, the point is, with this new battery chemistry and makeup, a 65 kilowatt hour battery pack would be almost half the weight and size of the one currently in the MG4 parked behind me. Now, that means you could have maybe a 130 kilowatt hour battery pack that was the same size and weight as the one already in the car. Or, much more sensibly, a smaller, lighter car with the same or possibly greater range than the MG4 has now. And it is impressive, which I can tell you, it's more than adequate for anyone. But if you had a smaller, lighter car with a smaller, lighter battery that still went the same distance, it would be amazing. And the other thing about these batteries, which is always part of the development, is that they will last longer. They will be able to charge and discharge more times. It'll push battery life to 15, 20 years. That's what we're talking about now. And they charge faster than the batteries we have now. And again, I want to underline this point. Internal combustion engine technology is at a dead end. There's nothing more that can be done to make engines, gearboxes, clutches, catalytic converters, fuel pumps, cooling systems any better. The technology is dormant. It's moribund. Now, I don't know how you say this, but Quantum is a Swedish heat pump maker who've just launched an award-winning apartment heat pump that is so compact it can fit under a kitchen sink. Now, this heat pump offers integrated heating, cooling, and hot water in one tiny system. The 6 kilowatt heat pump is modular, so it's easy to install and service. An important caveat to this is that it's designed to work with local low-temperature district heating networks with centrally placed heat pumps. We've done shows about these amazing big heat pumps that you often extract heat from rivers. or the sea. We featured some of these on the Fully Charged show in the past, but this kind of heating is very, very common in many European cities. So obviously that's why it was developed in Sweden. It can be installed in tens of thousands of houses. It's much less common in the UK. Of course, it is far and away the most efficient way of heating millions of homes in cities. These boilers are replacing millions of individual gas boilers in apartment buildings and saving the occupants a fortune. It is cheaper and better technology. Now, here's a statistic I did not expect to see at the moment. Okay, so big global picture. 25 years ago, European car makers totally dominated the mid and high-end car sector, particularly in the United States. When I worked in Los Angeles 22 years ago, all the cars that hipster Hollywood media types drove were German. BMWs, Audis, Mercedes, VW, they totally dominated the segment. Every studio car park was awash with beautifully made, top-line, top-quality German cars. Now it's Tesla. End of stories. That's just changed. Everywhere you go, it's full of Teslas. For a decade, Tesla literally decimated the stranglehold German car makers held in parts of the USA. But maybe that's changing a bit. I hope so. For a while now, I've been saying, along with a lot of proper grown-up automotive journalists who actually know what they're talking about, that the only European car maker who seems to be genuinely serious about moving their entire fleet to electric propulsion is VW. Okay, you could add Renault, possibly, to that list, but VW, big time. Anyway, maybe I'm wrong because 65% more electric cars were exported from Europe in 2022 than in the previous year. That is a massive growth. Now, before you start commenting, yes, of course, the last 3 years have been a total mess. But the simple fact is, European car makers are making and selling less combustion cars and more electric ones. And here's a little side note. The most important customer for electric cars in 2022, built in Europe, was the United Kingdom, which isn't in Europe, just in case you were confused about that. 14% in volume terms went to the United Kingdom, followed by the United States with 13.1%. And finally, car imports into the EU were up 22% last year. And guess what? The majority of those cars were electric. In China, this is a short one. In China, a car has been launched, a finished car, not an experimental car, finished production car, with a very different battery chemistry to that currently used. Sodium ion is emerging as a key battery technology, and Helen Chersky recently highlighted this in a Fully Charged show episode. It has a significant cost, safety, and sustainability benefit. A compact car was developed jointly by Hina Battery, a high-tech company affiliated with the Chinese Academy of Sciences, and the people who make cars at GAC Group. It is powered by a very pretty small 25 kilowatt-hour battery pack with an engine energy density of 140 watt-hours per kilogram, which, as you can see from our previous story, is fairly low. It's higher than a car from 10 years ago, but it is much lower. And it would still give very adequate range, by the way. So the point of this story is the technology is changing. It's shifting. Nothing is set in stone. It's quite possible that these batteries that are in this car are actually more suitable for static storage. So here's a story about a city that is transitioning away from cars. A city that has been absolutely centrally obsessed with cars for over 120 years. And it's a change that is annoying some people and delighting many, many more, but really making noticeable changes in her city is a woman called Anne Hidalgo. She is the mayor of Paris, and she's leading one of the world's most ambitious efforts to wean people off using cars in cities. She is helping to redesign transport, housing, jobs, and public spaces so residents can live in the city without long, polluting commutes. Paris is the second most congested city in Europe after London. And believe me, because I drove in London the other day, London is congested, all right? But now, many boulevards have a steady trickle of cyclists instead of a cacophony of angry, frustrated Parisian drivers stuck in endless, choking traffic jams. Now, I've had the privilege of spending a lot of time in Paris in my life. I love the city. It's hard not to. But I was always very aware that the car had come to utterly dominate the city. and it used to stink on a hot sunny day with so many cars. Many wealthy Parisians love to drive in the hopelessly congested streets and then park in the most insane way wherever they like. I mean, that is my perception. I may be wrong, I may be projecting. And French people are fantastic and lovely. Some Parisians slightly rude if you're English, which is totally understandable. But it always looked like barely contained and very dangerous chaos to me, the roads of Paris. But thankfully, the public transport system, the metro, is magnifique. So I don't think I've ever driven a car in Paris. Why would you? I did try to cycle once. I'm talking like 40 years ago. But I was literally pushed off my bike by an insanely angry man in a Renault bread van. And the language he used, unfortunately, I understood enough French to know it was deeply offensive. But I also laughed because he was barking bonkers. But that has changed big time. Paris is transformed. There are multiple videos on YouTube that will show you avenues and boulevards in Paris before and after the massive reduction in car traffic. It is unbelievable. Now, there are plenty of ultra pro-car freedom fighters and fossil-funded bully boys who will scream and shout and curse about what is happening in Paris. And there are plenty of wealthy people who live in spacious appartements in the very nice parts of Paris overlooking the Jardin de Luxembourg or something like that, who want to drive their Range Rover out to the chateau in Provence for the weekend. But the massive bulk of people in Paris love the fact that the city is becoming more and more car-free. The air is much cleaner. The streets are much quieter. How do I know this? Because this has been going on for a long time. It hasn't just happened the last couple of years. Car restrictions came in big time 5 years ago, and they've been increasing and increasing, narrowing the amount of street given over to cars. And it's been going on and on. And Mayor Hidalgo won a landslide election, a re-election. She was already mayor before this, but she won a landslide second election in 2020. Now, if everyone in Paris hated her, and let's be honest, French people are really good at hating politicians and having a bit of a riot. There's a lot of rioting going on in Paris at the moment, but there's no cars involved. But I say we need less cars around the world. We need to use less materials to make less cars. We need all ground transport to be electric. We need safe streets for people to walk and cycle in cities. We need clean air. We need renewable energy. And we need to develop a genuine circular economy where used materials are worth recycling because it makes economic as well as environmental sense. I don't think that's a stupid thing to strive for. I actually think it's quite a good idea. Now, there are plenty of voices screaming and shouting and spreading fear, uncertainty, and doubt that this cannot be done. And I'm telling you here and now on the Fully Charged Show, they haven't got a clue what they're talking about and they're lying. That's all. As always, if you have been, thank you for watching.